My name is Miranda Foster. I'm 32 years old, and until that Thursday night, I believed something very simple about love. That if you showed up consistently, if you gave your time, your attention, your care without turning everything into a negotiation, eventually the person beside you would meet you there. Not perfectly, but honestly, I built my life around that belief. I work as a physical therapist at a sports rehab clinic in Raleigh, North Carolina. My days are structured, predictable, joint mobility sessions, post-surgery recoveries, insurance paperwork that never quite ends. People come to me when their bodies have failed them, and my job is to guide them back into something functional again. It's steady work. I make about $81,000 a year. 3 years ago, I bought a 2-bedroom condo just north of downtown. That condo mattered more than I ever admitted out loud, because it was mine, my mortgage, my name on the deed, my furniture arranged exactly how I liked it, my parking spot, my door code, my peace. Then Nolan moved in. Well, not officially, not on paper, but slowly over 9 months, his things started appearing. A jacket here, shoes by the door, a toothbrush that turned into a second one, a drawer that turned into half the closet. We had been together a little over 2 years. Nolan was 34. He worked in regional sales for a craft beverage distributor, something that sounded polished until you realized it mostly meant late nights, client dinners, bar promotions, and a lifestyle built around being liked. He was good at that. Being liked. Handsome in a way that didn't feel threatening at first. Funny without trying too hard. Social in that effortless way that makes people lean toward you before they even realize why. In the beginning, it felt easy, comfortable. But somewhere along the way, something shifted. And not loudly, not dramatically. Just subtly enough that I kept telling myself it wasn't worth questioning. He would go quiet after arguments, call it needing space. He would flirt a little too easily with waitresses, call it being friendly. He had this quiet habit of treating commitment like something he was offering me, instead of something we were building together, and I ignored it. Because we were good, or at least good enough. Around month 20, the way he talked about us started changing. Not like someone who wanted to leave. More like someone who wanted options. It showed up in small conversations, casual, almost philosophical. You think people rush into forever? He asked one night over dinner. Depends on the people, I said. You think timing matters more than love? I remember looking at him then, really looking. Why are you asking me that? He shrugged, smiled like it didn't mean anything. Just thinking. But he wasn't just thinking. He was preparing. The official conversation happened on a Friday night at a rooftop place in North Hills. We were halfway through drinks. Sunset stretched across the skyline. String lights overhead. Expensive fries sitting between us, barely touched. He looked serious, not emotional, rehearsed. He said he loved me, said I was important to him, said he'd been feeling overwhelmed by expectations, by the pressure of where the relationship was headed. I listened, calm, still. Then he said it. Maybe we should take a break. I didn't react right away. I just watched him. And then he added the part that made everything clear. If we do, I need you to stay loyal while I figure things out. There it was. No dating, no talking to anyone else, no revenge decisions. He said the break would only work if we protected what we had. Protected. I remember thinking that was an interesting word, for a man asking me to sit still while he stepped away. I tilted my head slightly. What exactly would you be doing during this break? He exhaled, like I was complicating something simple. I don't know. Thinking, getting clarity, spending time with friends, just less pressure. Less pressure. For him. I felt something shift inside me then. Not anger, not even hurt. Clarity. So you want relationship benefits without relationship responsibility? I asked. He leaned back, gave me that tight smile people use when they think you're making them sound worse than they are. That's not fair, Miranda. No, I said quietly. Fair would be breaking up. What you're asking is to leave the door open so I'm still standing there when you decide you're bored. He didn't answer immediately. Then he said, I'm asking you to trust me. And something in my chest went completely still. You ever have a moment where everything rearranges itself? Where confusion dissolves so cleanly it almost feels disrespectful to how long you tolerated it? That was mine. I picked up my bag. I'm not on hold. He blinked at me. That's your response? That's my answer. I reached for my card, paid for my half of the drinks, $42 exactly, and stood up. I didn't look back when I walked out. He started calling before I even pulled into my garage. I ignored the first 3 calls, answered the 4th. Not because I wanted to fix anything, because I wanted to hear how he'd spin it. You're overreacting, he said immediately. A break isn't a breakup. Mature adults know how to create space without destroying something good. I stayed quiet. Then he said it. The line that ended everything. The whole point was that you were supposed to wait. Supposed to. Like I had been assigned a role. I smiled. Not because it was funny. Because it finally made sense. Nolan, I said softly, you don't get to reserve me. Then I hung up. When I got upstairs, I didn't cry. I didn't pace. I didn't overthink. I acted. First, I put his extra key, parking tag, and garage remote into a padded envelope. Second, I boxed every single thing he had slowly moved into my space. Shoes, jackets, toiletries, the little pieces of him that had quietly taken up residence in my life. Third, I changed the door code, removed his access from the building app. By midnight, everything that belonged to him was sitting neatly at the front desk with the concierge. No drama, no mess, just done. I sent one message. Your things are with the desk until Sunday at 6 o'clock. That's when the real performance started. By morning, I had 19 missed calls, 6 voicemails, and a message from his sister Mallory saying I was punishing him for being honest. His friend Travis texted that Nolan was just trying to be mature instead of cheating. That part stuck with me. Not that he wouldn't cheat, just at least he told you first. Interesting defense. I didn't respond to either of them. Nolan picked up his things on Saturday. I know because the concierge emailed me to confirm and added, your ex seemed emotional, but compliant. I appreciated that wording more than I expected to. Sunday night, he sent one last message. You're going to regret being this stubborn. I blocked him after that. And honestly, I thought that was the end of it. It wasn't even the beginning. 3 days later, I found out why Nolan had suddenly needed so much space. Her name was Avery, 28, blonde, worked in marketing for one of the beverage brands on his sales route. I didn't learn that because Nolan suddenly became honest. I learned it because Mallory made a mistake. She sent me a voice note she meant to send him. In it, her voice came through rushed and annoyed, the sound of someone too used to cleaning up after her brother to realize when she was revealing too much. If Avery was worth blowing up your life, she said, then stop crying over Miranda and own it. She deleted it maybe 30 seconds later. Too late. I didn't reply, didn't confront her, didn't even block her right away. I just sat there on my couch with my phone in my hand, the room quiet around me, and felt something strange settle inside me. Not heartbreak. That part had already burned through. This felt colder than heartbreak. Cleaner, confirmation. He hadn't needed time to think. He had wanted permission. Permission to reach for something shinier while keeping me exactly where he left me. A backup plan with a pulse. That same night, an email hit my inbox from Nolan's work account because I had already blocked his number. The subject line read, "Please be an adult." I stared at it for a full 5 seconds before opening it, partly because the arrogance of that title almost impressed me. The email was longer than it deserved. He said Avery was not what it looked like. Said he had only wanted clarity before making a mistake. Said my refusal to give him breathing room had pushed him into a corner. That line actually made me laugh once, softly, alone in my kitchen, as if my self-respect had trapped him. Then I reached the sentence that made me create a folder. If you had just trusted me for 30 days, we'd probably still be together. Probably. That word landed like a stain. I forwarded the email into a new folder and renamed it Evidence. I didn't fully know why yet. I just knew something in me had started preparing for weather. Nolan's next move was nostalgia. He sent flowers to my condo. Soft cream roses, expensive arrangement, a note tucked between the stems that said, "Nobody knows me like you." The concierge refused the delivery because I had already asked the front desk not to accept anything under his name. Unexpected ally number 1. The woman at the desk called me afterward just to confirm, and her tone held that dry professionalism that somehow makes everything feel less lonely. "Just keeping your boundaries intact," she said. I thanked her, then stood in my kitchen for a while with my coffee going cold in my hand, realizing something I should have understood sooner. Men like Nolan always become most persistent after they stop having access. Then came the accidental run-ins. Tuesday morning, same coffee shop near my clinic. He was already standing at the counter when I walked in. Not scrolling his phone, not distracted, waiting. He turned with perfect timing. Eyebrows lifting like surprise was a performance he had rehearsed in the mirror. "Miranda." I looked at him once, then past him. "Nolan, can we talk for 5 minutes?" No. I ordered my coffee, didn't shift my tone, didn't offer him irritation because irritation still counts as engagement if someone is hungry enough for attention. He stayed calm in public. That was part of what made it unsettling. He wore restraint like a costume, like he wanted witnesses to see him as the reasonable one, the man trying, the woman being difficult. Thursday night, same grocery store, same aisle. He stood there pretending to compare pasta sauces with the seriousness of a man selecting a heart valve. When he saw me, he smiled that sad, composed smile. "This is getting ridiculous," he said. "You're right," I said, reaching for a jar without looking at him. "You should stop." Saturday morning, farmer's market. He was leaning against a flower stand like a man who mistook persistence for romance. Again, same question. Again, same answer. No. Always no. But the messages from new numbers told the truth his public face tried to hide. "I miss you. You're making this bigger than it is. Avery was nothing. You were supposed to be my person. Why are you acting like I cheated?" That last one was almost artistic in its audacity. Acting like. As if betrayal only counts when the guilty party agrees with the definition. Around then, my friend Jenna decided I needed to leave my condo before it turned into a holding cell for my patients. She dragged me to dinner with a few people from her apartment building. I almost didn't go. I was tired. Tired of retelling the story. Tired of feeling like every social interaction came with the possibility of someone saying, "Well, maybe he just got scared." As if fear makes entitlement noble. But I went. And that's where I met Ethan. He was 33, a civil engineer, divorced, and quiet in the kind of way that makes silence feel safe instead of empty. He wore a navy button-down with the sleeves rolled just once at the wrists. He listened more than he talked. When he laughed, it seemed to surprise even him. He didn't scan the room while I was speaking. Didn't interrupt to make my story fit his. Didn't lean too close or perform empathy, like he was hoping to be rewarded for it. He just asked good questions and remembered the answers. When I mentioned a difficult patient recovering from ACL surgery, he asked how long that kind of rehab usually took. When I said I live north of downtown, he asked if I liked the coffee shop across from my building because he passed it sometimes on the way to a job site. Nothing dramatic, nothing slick, just attention without agenda. We had tacos the next week, then coffee, then a long walk around Lake Lynn where the air felt soft and the conversation never once turned into a negotiation about emotional labor. I didn't announce him to anyone, didn't post him, didn't mention him online. I wasn't trying to make Nolan jealous. I wasn't trying to prove anything. I was just spending time with a man who made calm feel possible again. And somehow Nolan found out anyway. Raleigh is like that. Too many overlapping circles. Too many people who know someone who knows your business badly. The first sign was a voicemail from Mallory. "So now I get it," she said, voice edged with smug satisfaction. "You already had someone lined up." I stared at my phone with a kind of detached disbelief. Of course. Of course, in their version, I was the one who moved dishonestly. The second sign came that Wednesday night at 10:47 p.m. My doorbell camera sent an alert. When I opened the app, Nolan was outside my building, pacing near the entrance, phone in hand, looking up toward my windows, like a man trying to summon a scene dramatic enough to make him feel justified. He didn't come upstairs because he no longer could, but he stayed there for 31 minutes. 31, long enough to prove it wasn't impulse. Long enough to make me sit perfectly still on my couch with all the lights off, not because I was scared exactly, but because I suddenly understood that he wasn't trying to reconcile. He was trying to regain position. Before he left, another voicemail came in from another number. "You really couldn't wait 2 weeks." I saved it. The next morning, I filed a report with building security and sent them the image from the camera feed. They took it seriously. Maybe that sounds like a small thing, but when you live alone, every person who treats escalation like escalation feels like oxygen. Owning property in a decent building means management tends to care when an ex decides the parking lot is his emotional theater. By the end of that week, Nolan had shifted from manipulative to insulting. He started telling mutual friends I had cheated. Not that I moved on quickly. Not that I had been emotionally detached before the breakup. No. In his retelling, Ethan had existed before the relationship ended. Apparently, I had betrayed him first. It was almost impressive how fast fiction formed once he got embarrassed. Then came the flowers to my clinic. White roses. Huge arrangement. The card read, "For my future wife, I'm still yours." My stomach turned over when Tasha from the front desk carried them into the break room with both eyebrows raised. "I'm guessing these are not welcome," she said. "No," I said immediately. "Please donate them anywhere but here." She nodded once, no questions, no drama. Then a second later, her expression softened. "Do you need someone to walk you to your car tonight?" I opened my mouth to say no, then stopped. Because that was the first moment I admitted to myself this might not settle down with silence. "Yes," I said. That one word felt heavier than it should have. That evening, as I walked to my car with one of the clinic aides beside me, I kept thinking about the card. Future wife. Still yours. like he was speaking ownership into existence because he couldn't tolerate reality without it. That was the week something changed in me. Up to that point, I had still been reacting, blocking, refusing, avoiding, enduring. Now I started documenting. Screenshots, voicemails, dates, times, deliveries, sightings. Not because I was dramatic, because I was finally beginning to understand that men like Nolan don't hear no as an answer. They hear it as an interruption, and interruptions in their minds are temporary. By Friday night, my evidence folder had subfolders: emails, calls, building incidents, workplace contact. I sat at my dining table with my laptop open, organizing proof of a story I never asked to live through, and for one strange second I almost wanted to laugh. Physical therapists document progress for a living. Pain levels, range of motion, recurring symptoms, aggravating factors. Turns out obsession leaves patterns too. Ethan called while I was in the middle of renaming audio files. I almost didn't answer because I was tired of hearing my own voice explain this mess. But I did. He listened quietly while I told him about the flowers, the rumors, Nolan outside my building. He didn't interrupt, didn't rush to solve it. When I finished, there was a pause. Then he said very gently, "Miranda, this doesn't sound like heartbreak. It sounds like control panicking because it lost access." I leaned back in my chair and closed my eyes, because that was exactly it. Not love, not grief, control. And once I named it, I couldn't unsee it. I should have known then that it was about to get worse. The fake emergency came the following Monday, 6:18 a.m. My phone lit up with a message from an unknown number. "Nolan was in an accident last night. He keeps asking for you. Please call." I sat up so fast I nearly dropped my phone. For a split second, instinct overrode logic. My chest tightened, my mind already moving ahead. Hospital rooms, injuries, regret layered over unresolved anger. Then I stopped, because something about the message felt off. Not hospital off, Nolan off. Too vague, too rehearsed, too perfectly positioned to trigger exactly the reaction it was designed to create. Still, I called WakeMed. No record. Not his name, not his description, nothing. Then I called Mallory. She answered groggy, confused. "What? No, he's fine," she said. "He's asleep at our parents' house. He got drunk watching the game last night." And just like that, two truths landed at once. One, he wasn't hurt. Two, he was willing to fake injury to get my attention. That realization didn't hurt. It erased something. Whatever soft corner had been left in me, it was gone. At 8:02 a.m., Nolan showed up at my clinic. Not as himself, as a patient. Tasha came back to my office, knocked once, then leaned in with an expression that was equal parts disbelief and quiet amusement. "Your problem is in the lobby pretending he needs rehab," she said. I closed my eyes for a second. Of course he was. "What did he say?" "Twisted knee," she replied. "Specifically requested you because you already know his history." I let out a slow breath. "Don't put him on my schedule." She nodded, already turning. 2 minutes later, she came back. "He's refusing to leave. Says you two ended in the middle of something important." That phrase made something in my eye twitch. Important. As if access to me was an unresolved appointment he had the right to reschedule. My clinic manager handled it. Nolan left before the police arrived. But not before telling two receptionists that I was cold, unstable, and ruining both our futures. Tasha printed the security footage, printed the incident report, placed both neatly on my desk before lunch without a word. Unexpected ally number 3. I added everything to the folder. By that point, it wasn't even about reacting anymore. It was about building a record. Ethan took me to dinner that night. We sat across from each other in a quiet place with low lighting and too much space between tables for anyone to overhear anything. I told him what happened. The fake accident, the clinic visit, the way Nolan spoke about me like I was a project he hadn't finished. Ethan didn't flinch, didn't downplay it. He just listened. Then he said something that stayed with me, long after the plates were cleared. "This isn't romantic, Miranda," he said. "It's control with better branding." I looked at him for a moment, the weight of that sentence settling into place. Because Nolan had always dressed his behavior up as something softer. Confusion, emotion, attachment. But stripped down, it was always the same thing. Control. 2 nights later, it escalated again. Ethan was dropping me off outside my condo. It was late enough that the streetlights had taken over, casting everything in that muted orange glow that makes even familiar places feel slightly unfamiliar. His headlights swept across the entrance, and that's when Nolan stepped out from between 2 parked cars. Perfect timing. Like he had been waiting, watching. My stomach didn't drop. It hardened. Ethan noticed him immediately, his posture shifting just slightly, alert but controlled. Nolan walked toward us, completely sober. That almost made it worse. No excuse, no blur. Just intention. "So this is him," he said, looking directly at Ethan. I didn't answer. Ethan stepped out of the car but stayed close, calm. Nolan pointed at him. "She threw 2 years away for this?" Still, I said nothing. Because I understood something now. Engaging with him was oxygen. And I wasn't feeding that anymore. "She was supposed to be taking time," Nolan continued, his voice tightening. "She told me she loved me." I turned to him then. "Just enough. I never promised to wait while you tested Avery." His face changed instantly. That name, spoken out loud in front of someone else, cracked something in his control. For a second, he looked exposed, then angry. Then he did something that, in a strange way, helped me more than anything else he had done. He reached for my arm. Not hard. Not violent. Just enough. Enough for the camera above the entrance to catch it. Ethan stepped between us immediately. "Don't touch her," he said, calm but firm. Nolan shoved him. Once. Not enough to knock him down. Enough to escalate. Security was already on the way. The building had been on alert since his late-night pacing the week before. By the time they arrived, Nolan had already stepped back. His posture changed. Voice softened. Expression wounded. "I just came to apologize," he said. "He provoked me." The shift was almost impressive. From aggressor to victim in under 10 seconds. The police arrived shortly after. I didn't raise my voice. Didn't argue. I just showed them everything. The messages. The fake accident text. The voicemails. The flowers. The footage from the previous week. Ethan gave his statement. So did the security guard. Facts. Clean, documented, unemotional. Nolan received a criminal trespass warning. It should have ended there. It didn't. It just moved. Online. Instagram posts about betrayal. Quotes about loyalty. Stories about women who monkey branched to the next man. He never said my name. He didn't have to. Anyone who knew us could read between the lines. Mutual friends started sending screenshots. Some out of concern. Some out of curiosity. I didn't respond. I just saved everything. Then he emailed my clinic's general inbox. Claimed I had mishandled his private medical information. That one almost made me laugh. He had never been my patient. My clinic's compliance officer handled it with a level of calm professionalism I aspire to. The complaint went nowhere. Another file added to the folder. Then his mother called me. Janice. Up until that moment, our relationship had been polite. Careful. She was the kind of woman who kept things orderly. Church every Sunday. Lists on the fridge. Practical shoes and quiet observations. I answered expecting another plea. Another version of, he's just hurting. It wasn't that. "Miranda," she said, her voice steady. "I'm calling to apologize for my son." I didn't speak. I just listened. She told me she had found messages. On the family tablet, Nolan had synced without realizing it. Messages with Avery. Flirty at first. Then more. Enough to make the timeline very clear. He hadn't been confused. He hadn't needed space. He had been exploring. And then asking me to stay loyal while he decided if the alternative was more exciting. Janice paused for a second. Then said something I will never forget. "He wanted you loyal while he decided whether someone else was worth it. That is not how a grown man loves." I closed my eyes, because hearing it from her removed any last shadow of doubt. She emailed me the screenshots. I added them to the folder. Then I did something I hadn't done yet. I stopped hoping he would stop. The next morning I hired an attorney. $700. A cease and desist letter was sent. Clear, direct, final. No more contact. No more appearances. No more messages. His response came 2 days later. Not through a lawyer, not through email. A handwritten note. Left under my windshield wiper. "You're humiliating me." I stood there in the parking lot holding that piece of paper, the ink slightly smudged from the morning humidity, and felt something settle into place. Not anger, not fear. Decision. That was the moment I filed for the protective order. Because some people don't stop when you say no. They stop when someone else enforces it. The hearing was scheduled 7 weeks after that rooftop conversation. 7 weeks. It felt longer. Not because of time, but because of everything that had filled it. Messages, documentation, escalation, the slow shift from confusion to clarity to something colder and more deliberate. By the time I walked into that courtroom, I wasn't nervous. I was prepared. Nolan was already there. Gray suit, trimmed beard, neutral expression carefully arranged into something that suggested regret without accountability. He held a legal pad like it was a prop he had been given to complete the role. For a second, I almost didn't recognize him. Not physically. But context changes people. When you stop seeing someone through emotion, they look smaller. His attorney opened with something polished and predictable. A difficult breakup, heightened emotions, miscommunication on both sides, an attempt to repair something meaningful that had spiraled out of control. It almost sounded reasonable until my attorney stood up. There's something deeply unsettling about watching your own life laid out as evidence. Clean, chronological, unemotional. First, the original conversation, the request for a break, the demand for loyalty, then the messages, the email telling me to be an adult, the line, "You were supposed to wait," the fake accident text, the flowers sent to my home, the flowers sent to my clinic, the security footage, the trespass warning, the voicemails, each piece placed into the record like a quiet correction. Not dramatic, just undeniable. Then came Janice's screenshots. The messages with Avery. Flirty, intentional, timed before the break. That was the moment his attorney's tone shifted. Because confusion only works when there's no timeline. Facts don't argue. They sit there and wait. The judge spent longer on one phrase than anything else. He read it out loud. "You were supposed to wait." Then he read it again. Slower. Like he wanted to understand not just the words, but the assumption behind them. He looked up at Nolan. "What exactly did you believe this woman owed you?" he asked, "after you requested a break in the relationship?" Nolan straightened slightly. "I thought there was an understanding," he said. The judge paused, then replied, "An understanding is not ownership." Something in my chest shifted when he said that. Not relief. Recognition. Because that had been the entire problem from the beginning. Not confusion. Not miscommunication. Ownership. Nolan's attorney tried to pivot, talked about closure, emotions. A man trying to repair something he valued. My attorney didn't raise her voice. Didn't argue. She just laid out the dates. Break requested. Loyalty demanded. Avery already present. Repeated unwanted contact. Workplace intrusion. False emergency. Surveillance outside my home. Physical contact at the building entrance. Each point simple. Each point grounded. Facts are quiet. That's what makes them powerful. The judge didn't take long after that. The order was granted. 18 months. No contact. No approaching my home, my clinic, or my vehicle. No third-party messages through friends or family. No gifts. No notes. No digital contact. Clear. Specific. Final. Nolan didn't look angry. He looked insulted, like reality had failed to cooperate with the version of events he had built in his head. After the hearing, I stepped into the hallway. For the first time in weeks, the air felt still, not tense, not waiting, just still. Janice was there. She walked toward me slowly, then pulled me into a brief, firm hug. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. "I should have seen it sooner." I nodded. "Thank you," I said. And I meant it. Because loyalty is easy when it doesn't cost you anything. It's different when it asks you to stand against your own. 3 months later, my life is quiet again. And I say that like it's the best thing that could have happened. Ethan and I are still seeing each other. Slowly. Normally. No intensity that feels like pressure. No conversations that sound like negotiations. We go to dinner. We walk. We sit on my couch and watch terrible home renovation shows while arguing about whether open shelving is practical or just a way to display dust. The first time I apologized for double texting him, he looked at me like I had said something strange. "Miranda," he said, smiling slightly, "that's just called having a conversation." I got promoted at the clinic in January. Lead therapist. A small office of my own. A raise that felt less important than the recognition that I was good at what I did. Tasha still teases me. Says my love life improved the moment I started documenting it like a patient chart. She's not wrong. My condo feels like mine again. No extra shoes by the door. No unfamiliar cologne in the bathroom. No presence that feels like a question mark sitting in the middle of my space. I repainted the guest room. Soft green. Nolan once called it too grandmother. Turns out, grandmother was right. It feels peaceful. From what I've heard, Avery didn't last long. Neither did the woman after her. Apparently, it's hard to build something stable when your foundation is built on options. The biggest thing I learned through all of this isn't complicated. It just took me a long time to accept. Romance without respect isn't love. It's performance. It can look convincing, sound convincing, come with flowers and apologies and carefully chosen words. But underneath all of that, it's just entitlement. Nolan wanted freedom for himself and loyalty from me. He wanted to explore without consequence, return without cost. He thought asking softly made it reasonable. He thought history meant access. He thought love would keep me standing still. He was wrong. The moment he asked me to stay loyal during a break, he told me exactly what he thought I was. Not a partner, not an equal. A placeholder, something to come back to if better options didn't work out. I'm not on hold. I never was.